Good evening, friends, and welcome to this edition of the Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. I'm Neal, your host, sitting here in the salon dining room at Field & Main Restaurant. I know for sure a few are going to be joining us, and actually they're here tonight too. They're dining in one of the cabanas, which is proving to be a pretty cool way to experience Field & Main. They start out the evening dining and then conclude with our mystery wine tasting just downstairs. A number of you I know have done that. Others haven't. No matter who you are, please chime in and let me know who is playing along this evening. I see that we have about 5 folks joining us. Bob and Dean, great to have you too. Thank you very much for joining us. This is something special, huh? Unique. Look at that color. I'm getting ahead of myself a touch, but wow. Neat to have a white wine, of course, but this doesn't seem like a light-bodied white wine, right? This seems pretty robust just by that golden color. We'll see. Sarah and her mother are downstairs. Dory and Larry, good evening. Welcome to you too. Great to have you on board. All right, well, let's work this wine. So, Peggy and Chris, hey, how are you guys? So nice to have you with us this evening. Good evening to you. Playing in this little number. Nice. Oh, Curtis, Renee, Bill, and Debbie, great to have you guys here. Welcome. So we've got a great crew tonight. Perhaps more joining as we proceed. What do you see when you swirl this wine? When you're looking at the color, I've already noted there's sort of this golden hue to it for sure. And when you swirl it, what's happening up here on the rim of the glass? Does it form sheets that fall down quickly? Does it form little tears that cry their way down, forming a leg that lingers? Or does it form quickly and kind of dissipate fast? These are almost, it's hard for you to see. There you go. That's a little better. They are moving slowly, and they are establishing legs that are prominent and hold their form, which is an indication potentially of some form of sugar, of ripeness. And so that sugar is either residual in this wine, i.e. left over, and so it's just syrupy sweet. If you think about honey versus water, honey would run very thick, or maple syrup, something with a high sugar content, or it's vinified all the way to dry, and therefore you have more sugar to turn into alcohol, and that alcohol is creating a weight and a viscosity. If you think about vodka versus water, vodka has more texture in the mouth than water does, and so same principle here-ish. And so you have greater viscosity, and as Dean noted, or Bob noted, great legs, and they go on for days, right? They are there forever. So we're thinking about some kind of extra viscosity, richness, residual sugar, higher alcohol, riper climate, later harvest. These are all potential possibilities. So it doesn't guarantee us that it's a ripe climate, but it could be. What we can say already is that this is likely not a cold climate wine, unless this is a very cold climate wine, for example, and it's the latest possible harvest. Think of ice wine. And so a cool climate Canadian wine that would have had, or does have, a series of residual sugar could also present with that kind of syrupy profile. I don't think that's what this is going to be, right? But you don't know for sure yet, just based on an appearance. And so it could be a ripe climate, it could be residual sugar. We have to figure more of that out as we go. So let's smell the wine. Wow. I think I'm influenced a touch by the gold color, but there's a golden apple, isn't there? Like a golden delicious element. And that's a gorgeous gold. Yes, I couldn't agree more. Well put. It is really, really pretty. There's a certain, well, we're looking for a few things, right? And I'm going to work that process. So fruit, earth, and wood, I already mentioned it, kind of a golden apple element. Earth, you're looking at things that smell and present kind of earthen in the profile. So from forest floor to maybe even tree bark. And then you're looking at rocks and stones and things of that sort. And then you also have wood, few things, fruit, earth, wood. And wood usually represents itself by either spice or some element of sort of cedar or vanilla, dill. Yeah, Curtis, definitely slight nuttiness. And I completely get your comment there, Dean. I mean, this is, if you close your eyes, and I didn't do that obviously when I opened the wine and poured it, and I also knew it was supposed to be chilled, so it's white. But if you were not experiencing that, yeah, you might think texturally this is potentially reddish, right? It's certainly playing with that. Apple and wood are clearly there. From Dean, I see your point there. Ripe pear, Curtis, 100% agree there. Talking about tree fruit, but we're talking about a little nuttiness, and we're talking about there's some kind of like, it's not so much spice as it maybe it is like toasted sesame. Is it? But maybe there's cardamom. Hmm. But it also could be like more of that bruised fruit or oxidized fruit, the older kind of sitting on the countertop apple or pear. Hmm. Ooh, yeah, nutty notes, golden apple, honey, Meyer lemon. Fun. Yeah, I just snuck a sip. I'm not sure if you caught that. I didn't even say try it yet. I couldn't resist. It just sort of happened, and I apologize for jumping ahead in the process. But I'm not really sorry. So, an artificial apology. There's a quality, yes, about this that aromatically it has a little bit of everything. Fainter on the spice side, so the wood is maybe present, but it's not prominent. The fruit is expressive in its sort of deep brooding fashion. It's not high toned, bright fruit. It's bruised, as Chris is also noting too. Old strawberries before they go off. Curtis, thank you for following me that way. Yes, I usually am following all of you who've had more than an occasion to try the wine before I get to, but couldn't resist. So there is a little spice coming out now, and maybe I'm digging for it, but there's a cinnamon element right now too. Hmm. This wine seems substantial, and the textural quality of the mouth certainly confirms that. But even the visual of that, those legs that go on for days, there's a quality about it that it feels like it needs to unfurl a little bit. This isn't. I'm not picking on Vino Verde, for example, but Vino Verde, bright, fresh, slightly spritzy, easy, approachable out of the bottle. You want it right there out of the bottle. You're just, the enjoyment of that wine comes in its fleeting moment in time. This one's more like, you have to get to know me before I'm going to reveal all my secrets. And so I think that's kind of the neat part about this. And I'm looking forward to our 22nd minute, when usually most of our wines kick into a different gear. But it's even beginning to do that now. It's a slow unfurling, an unraveling of its character, and that's really nice. Apple butter, mulled wine, absolutely. I did it again. All right, just taste the wine if you haven't. Let's taste the wine. Let's evaluate the wine as for taste, as opposed to just wanting to drink this wine. It's a very unique combination of a compelling palate, a richness and intensity, adjectives I would normally save for wines that would require some kind of savory application, a pairing, a wine that you would want at the table. This isn't a cocktail wine, but yet I find it kind of oddly compelling to just sit and sip it. Maybe I've been wanting a glass all day, and I'm finally having one. Yeah, there's a fresh cut wood toast on my second pour here now too, so there's maybe a little bit more spice and woody notes kind of coming out. And yes, there is a touch more acidity than I would have thought would be here based on that nutty aroma. I'll tip my hand now to say that when I smell sort of that nutty element and this viscosity and this color, I thought we would be heading towards, say, Roussan. Roussan's a Rhone varietal, a variety you'd find in the southeastern part of France in the Rhone Valley, oftentimes blended. And so it could be blended with some Marsanne, which would give us some more of that acidity. Could be Grenache Blanc, could be other blends. Yeah, there's a quality about this that, wow, lovely. Dry with a Pinot Sherry note. Yep, let's work the actual profile. And I like the tahini note too. Maybe think of maybe some shawarma. Gosh, we had some roasted chicken, spiced roasted chicken with tahini and garlic. I would do it. All right, so as you taste this wine, let's talk about taste. Palomino, yeah, we could be talking about a southern Spanish Jerez wine that is dry, but has some of those sherry kind of notes, being the Palomino grape. The oh wow, oh wow, yeah. There's a cured, almost meat, emulsified meat, almost bologna like. Yeah, Larry, there certainly could be Languedoc, southern part of France, for sure. White Rioja, yeah. Fiora is the grape there, or even white Tempranillo. We're going to feature a white Tempranillo on our upcoming wine buying event, our fall wine buying event in November, on November 9th. Whole milk texture, medium acidity. Is there tannin here? There could be. That color could come from a little bit of skin contact. A mild amount could come from some wood tannin. That this might be aged in wood. So Roussan, maybe Roussan blend. I'm just starting to collect what we've talked about. Viura, Palomino. I think we talked about lemon before, a little bit of nuttiness and viscosity. Could this be Chenin Blanc? I think you could throw that in there. It can have a textural quality about it. How about Semillon? This could be interesting. Semillon. I mean, we should consider, right? Just by virtue of the color and the texture, you don't necessarily have to put a lot of chips down for this bet, but Chardonnay, right? Chardonnay can have wood and texture and a little bit of this richness, but it doesn't read so much like that on the palate. Wow. The acidity is maybe even more than medium, isn't it? Does it rise to like medium plus? So whole milk texture. It has a relative brightness of acidity. There's a touch of almost fine grit sandpaper. So there's like a little bit of tannin here. Not grippy. It's not like layering your teeth with little individual tooth sweaters. But Dean, interesting question relative to Eastern Europe. I mean, maybe ferment. That'd be a really, really cool idea. Ferment coming from Hungary. Ferment presents sometimes a little bit like Chenin, and it has this sort of that sweet apple element at the back end. What is it? There's a sweet profile on the back finish. It's dry wine, right? But there's a sweet profile, which I think is a good example in this wine of where alcohol can be a bit higher and make you think it's sweet. It carries the fruit in a way that presents like sweetness, almost like what xylitol or whatever that is, the alcohol sugar. And I think there's a quality about that on the back end of the taste here. So absolutely could be something perhaps Eastern Europe too. So ferment, Chenin Blanc, Palomino, ferment. Curtis, if I missed ferment previously mentioned, I'm sorry, but yes, ferment could be one of these wines. But I think it could be in this mix. For those unfamiliar with ferment, ferment's one of the grapes that you might find in the production of Tokai. And Tokai is a botrycized late harvest sweet wine that is beautiful, a lot like, similar in a number of ways to Sauterne. And that's kind of where Semillon kind of pops in mind too. So ferment or Semillon. Fair enough, Curtis. You're good. Well, it was a good mention, and please share those great mentions because that's a really good thought. I think it's worth expressing for sure. Is there like a winter mint in the center of the nose right now? When you're smelling it, it's that appley fruit, that bruised pear. There's a little bit of that nuttiness. The nuttiness is sort of like a thin layer underneath. There's the fruit, and in a small core in the center is a little bit of a mintiness. Yeah, like when you take a mint leaf and you smack it between your hands and you get this aroma that comes out. It's more like the oils of the mint. Not super prominent, but again, it's this wine kind of unfurling and providing. Yeah. It's really kind of cool wine. This is fascinating. All right. So what do you think? Tea berry. Ooh, what's a tea berry and what does it smell like or taste like? I don't know tea berry. Curtis, I really like where you're going there with the Australian Semillon. I'll say this. I think I was referencing Semillon. So Semillon Bordeaux, Semillon sort of Argentina or Chile, Semillon from Australia. And the Semillons I've had from Australia that get here are not the oaky element. They're not in oak typically. They're stainless steel and they're much racier and more vibrant and bright. It's not to say that this couldn't be a different variation on that. And as a result, I don't think Australian Semillon, but South American Semillon could be interesting. And that could give us some texture and some of this profile. Wintergreen type thing. Oh, cool. Tea berry is kind of wintergreen like, huh? Thank you. I have to figure out how to find or taste, smell tea berry. That's really neat. That's a great note. It sounds better than winter mint or wintergreen, or it's a little bit more like pinkies up. I smell tea berry. That's really great. Hmm. Hmm. I find that though, like each sip, while weighty, is somehow fresh too. That's really neat. Clark's Tea Berry Gum. Thank you, Larry. I will search it out and have that experience for sure. You have that experience? Are you having the same where this wine has that weight and the viscosity? It's there, but there's like a cool lift where like the experience on the tongue is like being lifted off the palate and almost dancing kind of in an ether in the mouth. It's really lovely. Like that profile is pretty special, and that's where I think some of that mintiness is, that tea berry like experience is coming in. There's a tingling quality. Maybe that again is the alcohol carrying the rest of the profile here in just such a neat way. Let me ask this question too. How old do you think this is? Do you think it has age? When we were looking at it before, we didn't necessarily stop to examine and talk too much about the appearance other than the legs. There's a watery rim. I'm not getting a lot of rim variation per se, but a golden color is arresting for sure. Bobbin is doing the Tea-Berry Shuffle. More often than not, folks, Bobbin and Dean pop into the bar on Friday evenings, generally on the earlier side. I'm just offering. the next time that they're here, if you're here as well, we shall endeavor to get Bobbin to do the Teaberry Shuffle in the bar so that we can see it. That's a promise I'll make to you if you're around. You should avail yourself of that opportunity and that experience. Bobbin, I'm sorry if you're not a willing participant, you're going to have to do the Teaberry Shuffle for all of us. This is getting even better with that promise. I'm going to get some Teaberry gum and I'm going to get a Teaberry Shuffle and I'm going to figure out how Teaberry made its way into this interesting wine. It's not particularly evolving more, like we're 20 minutes in. It's kind of, for me, plateaued. I poured 2 or 3 sips. It's an indication too of how many times I've wanted to taste the wine. That hazelnutty element's coming out, and again, that for me is like almost a tell for Roussanne. So Semillon, Roussanne, ferment. I don't think it's Chenin Blanc, and I don't think it's Chardonnay. But it's tasty. All right, so what do you think? What do we know about this wine? High viscosity, legs for days, tears that formed and moved slowly, legs that held, rim variation, very little, so not necessarily too old. Watery rim, suggesting a little bit of a higher alcohol, riper profile. I think that's the case. We're getting a little bit of a sweet profile on the finish of the palate, which is really probably more the alcohol because it's dry. This is a dry wine. There's no lingering residual sugar. The profile of that sort of bruised apple compote element that accompanies the Teaberry and a little bit of this hazelnutty nuttiness, really pretty. Not a lot of spice in the palate. For me, particularly that cinnamon element and some of that cardamom note of the nose isn't necessarily as prominent on the palate. There's a little, though, faint kind of tannic expression, and that could be more of some oak aging. Some of that kind of spice, maybe more, acacia or a different type of oak used than just a different type of wood than oak. And maybe that's more an indication of what we might find in Hungary in a ferment than we would, say, in Roussanne, in the Rhone, or perhaps the southern part of France. Semillon from South America. I don't know. We didn't say something like Petit Manseng, which also has a lot of viscosity and potentially could have golden color. Not really pineapple-y here, right? Not particularly the profile. Yeah, there's this minty note. Gosh. Wild mint. Eucalyptus, for sure. Medicinal element coming in now. Tree fruits, pears, apples. Higher acidity, which Roussanne's not a higher acidity grape, right? It is a grape that presents a little bit on the lower side of acidity. Again, could get some of that maybe from the Marsanne that probably is blended with it. Very rare to find 100% Roussanne, but not very rare. A much rarer production when you see Roussanne as the star of the show. But that's cool. When it is, maybe we're talking about something like that. And that oak, right? So oak, alcohol, moderate plus acidity. It's not Semillon from Australia because of the oak. It's not necessarily Chardonnay because that fruit profile to go with that spice, that acidity, and that oak. While Chardonnay could have all those elements, they don't usually present like this. And it would be an interesting, weird Chardonnay for it to be Chardonnay. Chenin Blanc, I think we kind of took that out a little bit already. The lemon note that we picked up early on, one of you did. It's not real prominent necessarily, and it's not really that waxy lanolin element. There is some of that aged ripe profile, that dry. So, a Vouvray sec here could be interesting, but I think more compelling perhaps the ferment idea. Semillon from Bordeaux, you could have like Chateau Yquem makes this remarkable wine, which I'm sorry to say is definitely not this. We're not drinking Chateau Yquem's white, dry wine called Y, which is Semillon, and it is stunning wine. Has this concentration. It's oftentimes late harvested, but not necessarily botrycized, and so it's just this pure expression of Semillon in that concentrated place. I think, yeah, I think ferment's a really interesting idea here, and that was an idea put out in the ether thanks to one group here, and then something that came about thanks to another mentioning Eastern Europe. So a collective tasting again works out tremendously well here. We'll see if we're right, but I think it helps us work. This is old world, right? We're not necessarily thinking about it being a California Chardonnay, for example. I don't think we're thinking about Australia as much. I was just thinking, though, should we be thinking about, say, Semillon and something else, a blend? Should we be thinking about a Rhone blend in a riper place? Although the Rhone is fairly ripe these days for sure. I guess we could, and the Roussanne side of things, but I think I like the ferment element, especially that there's that kind of interesting complexity of flavor that comes perhaps from a really ripe expression of the grape, almost late harvest perhaps, and yet it's taken to dryness, and the grapes have this tartness and this acidity. And so, yeah, I think I'm with you on ferment. So Hungarian ferment. 2 to 4, 3 to 5 years of age. Let's say 2022. Man, that's compelling, isn't it? Yeah, Larry, like a little bit tried as back taste, right? It's not sweet. There is no sweetness. It's a dry wine, but the flavor has this depth to it that comes by way of some form of ripe grape, right? This is not a grape that is picked green or tart or didn't have the opportunity to fully mature. That sort of bruised pear apple, but also like there was a discussion about maybe a little bit of that, sort of fading strawberry. There's this concentration, a honey note, for sure here. So yeah, I think it's fair to say like nearly botrytis affected or really late harvest elements that are in with the rest of this. So ferment fits a lot of those and checks a lot of those boxes. And so 2022 ferment from Hungary is my guess. Curtis and crew like ferment. They should, because they first leveled up the idea of ferment. And you'll get extra points for being the one to bring the idea forward in our collective consciousness, if nothing else. One more taste, huh? Yeah, it's a compelling wine. Really compelling. That was a lot of fun. Uh-oh. This is Spanish. Nice. Verdejo. 100% Verdejo from Wavra. Very cool wine. 13.5% alcohol. All that texture and richness. Cuvée 9 meses. This is trying to read Spanish. Yeah, this is a really cool wine. Nice. 2022, so it's 4 years old. Wow, that's pretty cool. Very limited supply. That's a very neat designation there. I'm drinking bottle 167 of 13,000. Not a ton of wine produced there, but this is very tasty. Great selection, guys. Wow. Not what I expected either. I think ferment's a fair guess, but interesting to think of Verdejo. I think I would have thought of Verdejo a little less concentrated, a little less, and I don't mean this in a negative way, intense. Like there's an intensity to this expression. This is riper and more focused, and I'd have to know more about the producer here and what they're doing. It's a selection, right? They're trying to make something here, so maybe this is more the expression of a particular selection of place that expresses this really interesting profile of Verdejo. It shows a little bit of range, right? I mean, this is part of the issue with Verdejo and Verdicchio for me, and the number of these grape varietals that I just don't get a chance to try in any great spectrum. And so I've had one or two, and I make the assumption that I know a little something about that grape based on one or two experiences, and that's, you know, wildly inappropriate. And so there probably is a range when you're in a given place that specializes in something. And so tasting something like this, awesome. Just awesome. Yeah, Julie knows how to surprise us. This is a great surprise. That spice now coming out a lot, right? I have very little left in my glass. And there's just a really wonderful aroma in the nose that's hanging in the residual of the glass that is cinnamon for me and is still, wow. Yeah, really cool. To your question, yes, Larry, Rueda is in Spain, and it is an area that's to the north of the Douro River. So the Douro kind of comes across Portugal, and as it crosses the border with Spain, it becomes the Douro. And on the northern side of Douro, you have a little region called Rueda. Rueda grows Verdejo, and to everyone else's point too, generally, although not feigning, it's not, to go back to the pick on Vino Verde again, it's not light, bright, 9-10% alcohol wine. It is a substantial enough white wine that has some texture to it, but definitely not typically like this. And so it's an impact of a river-based place. Its climate is defined by higher altitude plateau and some river bottom kind of expression. So the weather patterns following that river and impacting the growing areas. And so this is a neat place for sure. Very, very cool. I'm sitting with that for a minute. I'm assured that you will too. And we'll get together again in the next month to experience this. If you have time and are available, though, in between and wish to have a pretty amazing experience with wine, you should join us next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is a special night. We're going to have the opportunity to present to you Louisa Rose, and Louisa is a phenom, a rock star in the wine world. She was the head winemaker for Yolumba and Pusey Vale in Australia, and I had the occasion back in 2010 to visit the Contours Vineyard, which is a vineyard in the Eden Valley, just north of the Barossa Valley. And Contours Vineyard follows this contour of the hillside, so there's not a straight row, and it makes Riesling. And she, one of the world's foremost experts on Riesling, and coming from Australia, they've been making some killer Riesling for a while, and she's going to do a seminar for us on Riesling to start with, and then we're going to jump into dinner and taste Viognier, and we're going to taste some of the oldest vine material Grenache on the planet, and then follow that up by some Syrah, some Shiraz, as it is more appropriately called down there. And the Shiraz is a special 175th year anniversary creation to celebrate 100-plus-year-old vineyards coming together to create this really fantastic Shiraz that'll be in magnums, and we'll have, I think, 10 or so on offer. And it is a lovely wine. And then we're going to finish up with their tawny style port. And just having her here is remarkable. She's renowned the world over, and she'll be in our little hamlet of Marshall next week, Wednesday. If you're around, there are still a few spaces left. Highly recommend it. It's going to be a transformative evening relative to having the opportunity to talk with someone so knowledgeable. And just special. So that and the wine buying event I mentioned before will be coming up on November 9th. So an opportunity to taste 16 to 20 wines or so with our team here and evaluate what you want to have on your holiday table for your gifts, for just the winter kind of fireplace dining night, whatever it might be. We'll have some options for you there. Until then, until next time, or whenever I see you next, cheers, everybody. Thank you so much.